Hare Krishna, good morning, Sukeshri, Hare Krishna, Yogadish, Amoda Vardhana, Haribol, Tunga Vidya, Ashta, Hare Krishna, Ram, glad you're here, Dinal, Hare Krishna, Dhruv, Halayuda, where are you?
I'm still in New Jersey March, but I'll be there by Saturday.
Yeah, that fan looked like New Jersey. Okay, Maitali, Hare Krishna, thanks for tuning in. Part, Hare Krishna. So this morning, I'm going to read you just a paragraph to start off with from the Tattva Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami's preface to his Sandarbhas, establishing epistemology and giving us a clear idea of who we are, why we're performing devotional service, why take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, why take shelter of the Bhagavat process of which we're partaking in here, chanting Hare Krishna. This may seem to be slightly an off-road section, but there's a purpose behind it in me reading it this morning, in that it's a reminder of how subtle the process of devotional service is, how much in contact we already are with Krishna constantly. We're only separated by consciousness, and how we can be revived by chanting Hare Krishna and being in contact with Krishna. So this is from um, Tattva Sandarbha, and it's text number 54 for those who are keeping track. Shruti testifies that the soul is present and conscious in deep sleep. Although he is not in touch with any external sensations, concrete memories, or dreams, he continues to witness his own existence. It is said that he perceives a kind of pleasure in deep sleep, a mild, temporary version of Brahmananda, the bliss known after liberation from material bondage. Because he still has desires for material enjoyment, the soul must leave this state and wake up again. But by this daily bathing in his natural happiness, he receives the rest he needs to endure his ongoing material life. Quote, embraced by the omniscient supersoul, he has no knowledge of anything external or internal. That's from the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, describing how when one's in deep sleep without dreams, one's embraced by the supersoul. Even while thus unaware of anything else, the soul in deep sleep vaguely and unconsciously perceives the presence of himself and his constant companion in the heart, the supersoul. Thus, after waking, he sometimes says, I slept so comfortably that I wasn't aware of anything. In other words, he remembers his own sustained existence through the period of deep sleep. The true ego of the eternal soul always underlies his false ego of material identification, ahankar. Uncovering itself momentarily in sushupti, it continues after final liberation as the soul's self-awareness of being a servant of the Supreme Person. So this is profound in the sense that we're in such a liminal state. Even as we go into one of the stages of consciousness, it's that deep sleep without dreams, we're in we're enveloped by Krishna. That's why we become refreshed when we come out of deep sleep. We never are apart from Krishna. We're constantly in touch with him, and he's constantly in touch with us. And the simple process of bhakti is to revive that awareness. Now, if just by being in proximity of Krishna and that during that time forgetting one's material ambition from through the false ego, that I have to maintain my stature as a material being, is such relief, what would it be when it's self-induced through chanting Hare Krishna and letting oneself be enveloped by the holy name, which is non-different from Krishna, and for the time being, while chanting, giving up any sense of false ego identification with the body, just being fully absorbed in one's identity as I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. Well, as it turns out, that would be a kind of elevated state of Krishna consciousness, and it's available to us through this process of chanting Hare Krishna. So let's take a few minutes to disengage from the mechanics of the mind, which are always grinding. This state is described by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partamanogatam. Prajahati means pratyahara. You step back from the machinations. The mind is grinding and is bringing out all these ideas that I have to survive, I have to survive, I have to survive, I have to maintain my false ego. And we can step back from that and just let it run, but take shelter of our real ego, which is I'm eternal servant of Krishna. And Atman Yevatmana Tushta, Krishna says, learn to take pleasure in the self. I mean, our consciousness is part and parcel of Krishna. Krishna is unlimitedly brilliant. We're illuminated when we're in Krishna's presence. So stay illuminated in the soul. Don't go into the machinery of the mind. And we can do that with the help of the holy name by taking help from the potency of Krishna. Nam Nam Akari Bahudan Nija Sarva Shaktis. All his personal potencies are there within his holy names. So let us take shelter of Krishna's potencies, his Hladini Shakti fully present there within his holy name. And if you can't get into that state, don't worry. It's one of the most difficult things to do. Yogis since time immemorial have been trying. We've just been given a supreme shortcut, but we have to practice a lot. And we have to do it with great intensity and concentration. Does that sound fair? Yogidish, have you been starting with the Bhuta Shuddhi or just going straight in?
It varies. Sometimes we start with Buddha Shuddhi, sometimes we go
Let's do
straight.
the Bhuta Shuddhi to go along with this. Then we'll say Shri Krishna Chaitanya, and then we'll commence. I am by nature the eternal servant of Krishna, but by misfortune, due to being inimical towards him since time immemorial, I've been wandering within the cycle of birth and death in the material world, being burnt by the threefold miseries. Now, as a result of some unimaginable good fortune, by the mercy of my spiritual master, I know that I am an infinitesimal living being, completely apart from the gross and subtle body. Now, by the order of my spiritual master, I have obtained the good fortune of serving his lotus feet, as well as the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Sri Radha Madan Mohan. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Don't go anywhere now. It's good being a transcendentalist, right? Say yes. Because transcendentalists are above the material body. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamcha Yovya Vicharina Bhakti Yogena Sevate Sagunan Savatitaitan Brahmabhuya Yakalpade. If you want to move above the modes of nature where you're getting thrashed, who likes to get thrashed? Nobody. Then you have to have a transcendental process. And the best of all processes is Bhakti Yoga. Now I'm going to read you something, because today's the day for very interesting but perhaps obscure quotes. that I just read yesterday in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Would you like to hear something from the Srimad Bhagavatam? I'm asking questions for which I'm fairly sure I'll get unanimous answers. Okay, brace yourselves though. When a conditioned soul of demoniac mentality identifies himself with the gross material body, he undergoes miseries of constant drowsiness and unquenchable sexual desires that burn all mental peace and serenity to ashes. When a demoniac person identifies himself with prana, the life air, he suffers from hunger. And by identifying himself with the mind, he suffers panic, fear, and hankering that ends in disappointment. When he identifies himself with intelligence, he suffers profound existential bitterness and frustration deep within his heart. When he identifies himself with the false ego, he feels inferiority, thinking, I'm so low. And when he identifies himself with the process of consciousness, he is haunted by memories of the past. All goes to show that descending into the bodily conception of life, whether the subtle body or the gross body, or consciousness itself, which is infused with the modes of material nature, is suffering from beginning to end. When we're able to take our minds and place them at the lotus feet of Krishna through the chanting of Hare Krishna, we avoid the treachery of the material world, the dashing waves of this ocean. What's more, our lives become purposeful because our dharma, Sanatana Dharma, is to serve Krishna. And when we have that, all the creativity, all the impetus we have for life becomes sweet and optimistic, and we become happy. Therefore, japa is good. So let's have a few reflections, and we'll start today with Maitali. Anything you're thinking, realizing, just tell the stream of consciousness where you're at.
Hare Krishna. Based on what I just heard, Maharaj, what you just read out, I was just thinking about how, like, no matter what we try and like do in this material world, like make ourselves feel better, it's all temporary and it's gonna make us like feel miserable. So we should just chant the holy names and be happy.
Thank you, Maitali. Fantastic. And now we'll hear from Nitai.
Hare Krishna. So over the last few days, I've been attending Gauranga Darshan Prabhu's classes on the Shikshashtakam, and I've he's been like, he went over the first 5 verses, and while I was chanting, I was just thinking how hard it is to attain Krishna Prema. It's not that you just chant a few rounds every day and then you're gonna get Krishna Prema. It's much more deeper than that. And it also just made me realize how exalted devotees like Haridas Thakur were, and why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to cry so much when he was chanting, and how much bhava he had for the Lord.
Thanks, Nitai. I think interesting you mentioned that, because from my vantage point where I'm sitting behind my screen, there's a large picture of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And this morning when I was chanting, I was remembering how he made a vow to chant 1,000,000,000 names. He was very successful acharya, and he spent 10 years chanting 1,000,000,000 names. So that goes to your point too. You don't just mess around and fall into prema. Dhruv, let's hear from you down there in Los Angeles. What are you thinking? What are you realizing?
I was reflecting on a piece that you mentioned about really stepping away from all the material engagement and the material thoughts before we began. And then while we were chanting, I was also remembering very specific when we were doing japa together in Vrindavan a couple of years ago, and you were emphasizing how much the importance of leaning into the holy name and leaning into the japa. So I was trying to remember those two pieces today.
Yeah, I like the metaphor leaning in. It's like crossing through a doorway where we have no other awareness except for the holy name. It's thinking back to what I read at the beginning, that there are states of consciousness that we cycle through. And one of them is that deep sleep. Even then, we have proximity to Kṛṣṇa. If we can learn to cross beyond the chatter of our minds and enter that door, lean into it, where we're enveloped by Kṛṣṇa, then our lives will become enriched by this internal potency of Kṛṣṇa. Okay, let's see. Who's going to comment next? Amodavardhana.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Today I was remembering Bhagavad Gita 2:14, and it discusses how we have the different seasons and they arise from sense perception. And today in the morning I was feeling kind of cold, and I was then thinking about how breakfast is smelling really good. And I was just thinking about how difficult it is to tolerate, because even though I may tolerate, it's not even about tolerating, it's about becoming indifferent. And that was a bit of a meditation in terms of how much of a grasp my senses have over me, and how the only way to get free from it is to continue just trying to chant one good round, or not even one round, but one name of Krishna, and just bringing my attention back to the mantra.
Thank you very much for a real life description of waking up in Seattle. And here I'm going to read something related that I studied yesterday also in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Virakti means detachment, whereas Tyaga means renunciation. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the word renunciation can be used in a situation in which one considers giving up an enjoyable object. But by considering everything to be potential paraphernalia in the service of Krishna, as described in the previous verse, one need not give thought to renunciation, for one uses everything in the proper way in the service of the Lord. Yukta vairagyam uchate. Virakti means you're so absorbed in using things for Krishna that there's no consideration of sense control, because the senses are automatic control. And Tyaga means giving up an enjoyable object. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya paramjushvarna vartate. When we experience the bliss of serving Krishna with our senses, then all senses become controlled. Well, today is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Divine Disappearance Day. This is a day, actually, in history when we began in earnest our monthly Sankirtan festival in 2007. It's the first poster we ever made. And since then, by his grace, the monthly Sankirtan festival somehow or other has gone on, and we've been able to take shelter of that in many places around the world. And so I'm going to end with a prayer today to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But first, I'll give a quick anecdote. In Mayapur, there used to be no buildings around except for the temple room and the long building. And Srila Prabhupada would go out every morning for a morning walk. And you could see him walking with his entourage. We would stay in front of the temple. We, the Sankirtan devotees and the rank and file, would have kirtan and greet him when he'd come to the temple room. And one morning we had a extremely enthusiastic kirtan going on. And Prabhupada had stopped to observe the kirtan. He didn't just walk through. And he made some comments. And later on, I heard from the devotees who were on the morning walk that he had said, one of them had said, Prabhupada, this is fulfilling the vision of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because Bhaktivinoda had said he wanted everyone from around the world, the Westerners, the Easterners, everyone to come together and chant Nitai Gauranga Jai Sachinandan here in Mayapur Dham. And And the devotee said, Prabhupada, you've fulfilled his vision by bringing them here. And Prabhupada then said, I have brought them here, but now by by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's mercy, they will be delivered. And I heard that, and then one day I was listening years later to a series of lectures of Prabhupada, and it was a morning walk. It was that very morning walk, and I heard him say the very same thing. So Prabhupada had this deep abiding respect and faith in Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. If we pray to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as we have a right to do, he's one of our previous acharyas, like having a grandfather, great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather that you can pray to and say, please protect me. And it's not they're not never out of reach. They're always there as our benefactors. Then we can ask for some blessing. Dear Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, if you so desire on this divine day of your disappearance, please watch over us and guide us to take the proper steps to execute pure devotional service and walk in your footsteps. Please let us expand the Sankirtan movement by the mercy of our founder Acharya, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and our guardians. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. I'm deeply impressed that you all came for the Japa Jolt today. And it's a jolt, just like starter cable, jumper cables they keep in a car to start another car. So be like jumper cables out there today. Try to start something somewhere. From whatever you've gotten from this, pass it on to other people. Panchakalptaruscha kripasinabhevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Be a kind friend to all living beings, starting with your roommates, parents, friends. Hare Krishna.